I started lifting over 17 years ago. Within the first 5 years, I pretty much doubled my body weight. I made some mistakes along the way, and I've seen other people make mistakes. But in this video, I'm going to discuss the top 10 muscle building mistakes that you can make, and I actually see people make daily. So let's get right into it. Mistake number one, you don't have a program. This could actually be that you do have a program, but your program is not set up for you to build muscle. But generally speaking, if you have some sort of program and you're a beginner, you're going to make progress. Even if the program sucks, if you're consistent with that program, you're going to make some progress at least, even if it's not optimal progress. Having a program is really important. You need to know whether you're progressing, and if you don't have a program, how are you going to refer to it and know whether you're progressing? And another one really tied up within the same mistake is having a program and not actually sticking to it long enough. If you're not sticking to it long enough, you're not going to see results. You need to make sure you're sticking to it for at least 8 to 12 weeks, and then you can make some changes or go onto a brand new program. You need to give your body time to adapt. Usually the first 4 to 6 weeks are where neurological adaptations take place. You get better at the movement, you build some foundational strength, and then the muscle hypertrophy, so the building of the muscle comes after that. Don't get me wrong, you still build muscle within the first 4 to 6 weeks, but a lot of it comes when you're actually able to do the movement better and your mind-muscle connection is better too. So make sure you're sticking with your program. Eat big to get big, bro. I mean, you've probably heard that 1,000 times. I did, especially when I was younger, especially when I was building muscle. I actually made a big one. My biggest mistake actually was getting fat. So I went from skinny to fat just in the pursuit of gaining muscle. I followed advice, literally eating 6 to 8 meals a day and just stuffing my face, pretty much force feeding myself a lot of the time. And then my appetite increased, and then I just, kept on eating, and I put on way too much body fat. And this is what can happen if you go too far into a surplus. The exact surplus you need to build muscle, there's a bit of debate around it. It's between something like 350 and 550. That's kind of the agreed amount, something along those lines. But to be honest, everyone's different and everyone responds differently. So it's good to just start with a modest surplus, and then you can work your way up. If you're not gaining, you can work your way up. So I actually recommend, if you're happy with your current body fat levels, then you can go into a slight surplus of, say, 100 to begin with, all the way up to 400 calories per day, and just take a look at how your body's progressing. If you've still got excess body fat to lose and you're a beginner, you may be able to benefit from a body recomposition. I've done a few videos on this, so you can click above and watch that now, or wait until the end to watch that. But that's basically where you lose body fat and build muscle at the same time. But if you're not eligible for that, and you're at your desired leanness and you just want to build muscle, I'd say honestly start on the lower side, and then you're not going to make the mistake of putting on too much body fat. Don't get me wrong, there will be a point where you're going to have to put on a bit of body fat, but you just really want to minimize that. Otherwise you're just going around in circles, you're going through bulking, cutting cycles, and it's a bit disheartening. Mistake number 3, this is high on the priority list. You're not getting enough sleep. I see people make this mistake time and time again, and they rely on caffeine and other stimulants to just get them through their workout. Number 1, if you're not sleeping enough, your energy to work out is going to be really low, and it's going to negatively impact the amount of weight you can lift. Also, your actually desire to go and work out after a busy day, say at the office or just at work in general, and going, running on very little sleep and going to train. It's tough. Trust me, I've been there, I've tried that, and honestly, it was very, very difficult to get workouts in and very difficult to put in the same effort into those workouts. And obviously, not sleeping enough can impact human growth hormone, so HGH can impact testosterone and protein synthesis. All of these impact muscle growth. So not sleeping enough can impact muscle growth as well as fat loss. One particular study actually found that even one night of sleep deprivation can impact markers of muscle growth. So make sure you're trying to aim for between 7 to 9 hours sleep a night to make sure you're maximizing muscle growth. You're lifting too heavy. Yes, that's a thing, believe it or not. If the amount of weight you're lifting sacrificing your form, your ability to contract your muscle under tension, then you're not doing you're not working your muscles enough for them to adapt and grow. Look, there will be a point where you're lifting heavy by comparison to what you're lifting now, of course, and you're always going to lift heavier than, well, I must say always, over time you're going to lift heavier than what you're lifting now, but you don't just have to lift heavy for the sake of lifting heavy. The goal is not to just move one object from A to B, it's to stimulate the muscles, to contract the muscles under tension. That is what is going to cause them to grow, not just the act of lifting the heavy weight. So make sure you prioritize form. Don't sacrifice form just to lift heavy. If you can safely work in the 6 to all the way up to 30 really, but most of your reps should be between 6 to 15 reps. If you can safely do that with strict form in, I would say about 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, that's 1 to 3 RIR, depending on the exercise, obviously, then you're working with the right weight. If you're taking it to failure and you're not even completing a proper rep with full range of motion, then you should lower the weight. What you're doing there is really significantly increasing your chance of injury, and obviously you're not working the muscle correctly. If you get injured, you get sidelined for a long time, and maybe you won't go back because you'll get put off because you've been injured. Mistake number 5, you're not lifting enough weight. This is just as common as lifting too heavy, because you have a fear maybe of injuring yourself, so you go really light and you don't put enough effort in and you don't regularly increase the weight, and that could be down to the fact you don't have a program, or you don't have a progressive program, or you don't have a plan of action when you go to the gym. You don't say to yourself, look, this week I'm either going to increase the reps, or to a point, and that you're going to increase the weight after that, after you've hit your rep range. If you're going in with a plan, then you're always going to progress your routine, your program in some way, shape or form. So this is a thing, you can lift too light, and if you're lifting too light, you're not going to stimulate enough growth. You're not going to maximize your muscle growth. You'll stimulate it to a point and your body will recognize that the weight, you're applying the same stimulus to the muscle and it just won't adapt. It's just plain and simple. Even though that sounds broy, it's just what happens. If you keep giving it the same stressor, it has no reason to adapt because it's already adapted. Mistake number 6, you're doing too much volume. Obviously, the amount of volume someone can tolerate depends on person to person. People with extremely good genetics can tolerate a lot higher volume some of the times, and other people cannot recover from even a small amount of volume. But there is a general consensus within the scientific community that between 10 to 20 working sets, that's not including warm-up sets, is enough to maximize muscle growth for most people. Brad Schoenfeld and colleagues actually compared 10 sets to 5 sets and found significantly more muscle growth using 10 sets than 5 sets. That's just one example. There's plenty of examples in the literature that show the volume to a point. It's an inverted bell curve relationship, inverted U-shaped relationship anyway, or a bell curve, where the amount of volume to a point is going to build more muscle, and then after that it's just pointless and sometimes even detrimental. If you're overworking your muscle, you're much more likely to get injuries, not necessarily overtrain unless you do it for a really long period of time. You can under recover, which is similar to overtraining, which means you're not going to build the muscle. You could actually lose muscle in some cases. So I would start on the lower end of that volume recommendation. You can even start lower just to start out, just meet yourself where you're at, and then slowly build on that. You can start as low as 9 sets and just build on that per muscle group per week, and then just, like I said, slowly build on it, and then over time you can add more volume. Some signs that you're doing too much volume: you're sore all the time. It might not even be your muscles that are sore, it might feel like your muscles, but your joints, your tendons, everything around them, and your strength is going down. Also, you don't really get a pump in the gym anymore. So look out for those signs. If you're experiencing those signs, then just pull it back a bit and then experience more muscle growth. You're not drinking enough water. Even mild dehydration can affect performance, and if your performance is affected in the gym, it reduces your ability to progressively overload and to increase the tension on the muscles each time. So you need to remember to go into your workouts hydrated and stay hydrated. It's not that 1 gallon a day you have to drink for everyone. That's probably too much for most people. Somewhere between 2.5 to 4.5 liters will be enough for the majority of the population. If you sweat more, you can obviously increase that, but that's a good range for most people. Let me rephrase that slightly. Fluids in general, because if you're drinking calorie-free fluids, those also count. Stuff like if you like amino acids or the water in your protein shake or herbal teas, that can be counted towards your fluid intake. Mistake number 8, you're just not resting long enough between sets. There has been some literature to suggest that resting 1 to 2 minutes can produce a decent amount of hypertrophy, but Schoenfeld et al. In 2016 actually found that resting 3 minutes is better for muscle growth than resting 1 to 2 minutes. So resting actually 2 to 3 minutes was kind of the recommendations to take away from that paper, the practical applications. But still, some literature actually suggests if you're a beginner starting out, you can get away with resting less. But as you progress and your lifts go up and the demand on your body goes up from the lifts because you're lifting heavier and heavier, you're going to need to rest more. Resting more will enable you to lift heavier and progressively overload the muscles. Obviously, weight is not the only way you can progressively overload the muscles, but you'll also be able to get that extra rep or 2 out, which is going to lead to progressive overload. Mistake number 9, you listen to Zac Efron and you're not eating enough protein. So not eating enough protein can mean under recovering, can mean just not really building that much muscle, not maximizing muscle growth. There's a bunch of recommendations that have been thrown out there. Some people would eat far too much protein, other people far too little. To be honest, most of the food diaries I've looked at, I've looked at hundreds of different food diaries over the years. I would say most people looking to be healthy and look after themselves are eating too little protein. And eating too little protein, like I said, is going to impact your muscle growth. You want to be aiming for between 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. And if you are on the heavier side, then I suggest actually doing 1 gram per pound of body weight or 2.2 grams per kilo of goal body weight even. So you want to take your goal body weight and times that by either 1 if you're doing it in pounds, or times it by 2.2 if you're doing it in kilos. Mistake number 10, the final mistake, you're doing too much cardio. If you're doing too much cardio, you're likely not going to experience what I talked about in a previous video. It's called the interference effect. But what you may experience is a lot of fatigue. You carry that fatigue into your resistance training sessions. You're not going to be able to lift as much, and you're not going to be able to build as much muscle. It's plain and simple. You're going to impair your ability to recover, especially if you're running like every day or you're doing cardio every day. If your priority is muscle growth, then I actually suggest doing maybe 1 to 2 cardio sessions a week at tops, or just walking every day. If you can do 10,000 steps by walking, then that's more than good enough. But if you wanted to just put in a session of cardio or 2, then 1 to 2 sessions, and then 3 to 4 resistance training sessions, you've got the perfect combination. Those cardio sessions can be 20 to 30 minutes. One could be like a HIIT session, a high intensity intervals training session, and the other could be like a steady state on like a bike, like if you've got like a Peloton or like a bike or a rowing machine, something like that, that doesn't give you that much fatigue. Running can actually be a bit taxing, so it's up to you if you want to do 1 running session a week, but doing multiple running sessions a week could lead to way too much fatigue and just impair your recovery a bit. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you have any questions at all, please comment below. And if you have got this far as well, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and hit those bell notifications. As I mentioned in the previous video, if you're a man and you want to join a growing Facebook community, free growing Facebook community, head on over to Facebook, join my Facebook group, and there's lots of exclusive free content inside. Anyway, if you've got any further questions, feel free to send me a DM. You can send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email, adam@adamscottfit.com. And until the next video, keep pushing those limits.